I just want to guess. How many cricket lovers here? Please put your hands up. Good. That means I am the only man out here, odd man out here. Yeah, no, I don't hate cricket. Uh, I also don't dislike it. But I want to promote other sports because cricket was being given so much of importance that I believe that other games have suffered because of that. Of course, that subject we'll take a little later. But we start from the time when cricket really picked up in India. And that was 1983, the World Cup. Under the leadership of Kapil Dev, when India won the World Cup, that was the time when cricket actually began picking up in India. And interestingly, we have the author of the book, Miracle Men, sitting right next to me. We'll start with him and understand what made him or what promoted him to think of this book and what is this book all about. Over to you, Nimish.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It was a lovely introduction there. And I'm like you, who loves other sport too, but I love cricket too. The reason I wrote about the 83 book, everyone must understand that I was just 4 years of age when that event happened. So I have no recollection of that particular event. But, because of my interest in cricket and watching cricket, the first World Cup that I can remember is the 87 World Cup and then followed on from there. But the reason is that there was so much little information about India's greatest triumph, that I consider it India's greatest triumph, is what motivated me to write the book. I was very surprised. I met the 6 journalists who traveled at that time. Nimish would tell you that he just went for the Cricket World Cup and there are no less than 100 Indian journalists that travel now. At that time, there were just 6. And none of those 6 journalists chose to write about this book. So I met most of them and asked them why they didn't. So most of them wrote articles about it. You had people, the manager of the team at that time was Mr. Mansingh. He played a very crucial role. He wrote a book about it too. Balwinder Sandhu, one of the team members, wrote a book about it, but none of them chronicled the World Cup and what made the journey so special. So essentially, it was all chapters. I'm sure a lot of you would have known about things like Kapil Dev taking that catch of Viv Richards. You've read a lot of literature about that, or you'd have Balwinder Singh Sandhu getting Gordon Greenidge out, and just those little moments. But no one had chronicled the whole thing, and I thought that because it was such a turning point, it was such a catalyst that changed Indian cricket as we enjoy it today, as my generation enjoyed it, it all boiled down to that. I'm in no way demeaning what happened before that. India's, Test series wins in 71, or the first ever Test series win as such, or what a icon Lala Amarnath or C.K. Naidu were. But in that sense, it never made Indian cricket the big draw that it is today. You talk about other sports, I would say before 83, Indian cricket was the other sports. They had to literally beg for a prize money, as most people know. They were given £20,000 as a winner's check. The BCCI famously offered 2 lakh rupees, which was to be divided between the 15 members. And Sunil Gavaskar at that time had said, quote unquote, that we're not looking for tips. So this is part of my book when he had said that. So see, from there to now, where they have multi-crore yearly contracts and all. So that's the reason. One, I wanted people who enjoy Indian cricket where it is at the pinnacle, both financially and as far as the performance is concerned. That, and also because, they'd relive that moment which has not been captured very well by television. As you know, only 2 matches were shown live. There was the semis and the final, so not a lot of people got to see the matches. So those are the essential reasons. And while I was writing the book, I discovered so many things that even the players don't remember. And you'd be amazed. I had my book launch in Delhi, and there was Kapil Dev and Yashpal Sharma and Kirti Azad and Madan, a few members of the team. And there are certain insights in this book which were an eye-opener even for them, because as players they never saw what was happening around them. They were only concerned about how many runs they got over. So there, I'm not trying to plug my book, but there are plenty of other insights that you can get in this book, which is why I think it is the biggest moment in Indian cricket, and I chose to write this particular book.
So is it only about the World Cup, or?
So no, it is about the World Cup, but it actually starts from, there are 2-3 other very important events that happened leading up to the World Cup. So it actually starts with, the book actually starts with a 10-year-old Sachin Tendulkar. So Sachin was nice enough to give me time and narrate how he saw the World Cup. he hadn't started formal cricket training before the 83 World Cup. In fact, he tells me, which I mentioned in the book, he had not seen a cricket match before the 1983 World Cup final. In fact, the final he found very boring because he couldn't imagine how people could watch. That time there was a 120 over one day match. So he narrates of how he found it so boring. He was more interested in John McEnroe playing his third round match in Wimbledon that time than India playing the final of the World Cup. So while he's watching this on a black and white TV at his friend's place, he also gets bored and leaves this, goes to his house, turns on the radio and listens to his favorite tennis player, that's John McEnroe, playing his third round match at the Wimbledon with Brad Gilbert. So he narrates how he's shuffling between his house and that, and how certain things he picked up listening to his elder brother Ajit at that time. And after India won that World Cup, he goes out to a park which is still there in Bombay, in Bandra, called Nanda Devi, and celebrates with his friends and his brother's friends. And from there on, he starts taking cricket seriously. So the book actually starts with that. But other incidents that lead up to this story, which make it very fascinating. One is the constant fight between the two superstars of Indian cricket, that is Sunil Gavaskar and Kapil Dev. Both of them were very kind enough to give me time and give their perspective, which the book has. So I'd just like to recreate one of those stories. It's the Pakistan tour where in February, so the World Cup starts in June, it's in February where the Pakistan tour is. Sunil Gavaskar is captain. India's having a real bad time. And as you know, if you go back in history, every time an Indian captain lost a series in Pakistan, he'd lose his job too. So India trailing 3-0 in that series is the final test match in Karachi. So that's one of the other chapters before the World Cup. And during a test match before it in Hyderabad, while Gavaskar is captaining, two selectors, that's Fateh Singh Gaikwad and Bishan Bedi, fly from India and have a secret meeting with Kapil Dev on the sideline. And Gavaskar is captain, and he sees that secret meeting take place. And he wonders why that is happening. Because if the selectors had to really speak to someone, it would be the captain. He observes this happening. It's only in the sixth test, it's the rest day. In those days, there used to be a rest day in the test match. It's only during the rest day that Kapil Dev and the North players were supposed to come back from Pakistan via the Wagah border to Delhi. The Bombay players actually fly into Bombay. And he sees that all Delhi players are planning their return to Delhi, but Kapil Dev books himself on a flight to Bombay. And he just puts two and two together and he knows that his captaincy is gone. Because if he's going to Bombay, that means that he's meeting the people at the BCCI office in Bombay and that he'd be the next captain. So it starts on a very bitter note when it comes to these two, where it all could have been done well had if the BCCI had been transparent, which it never was. So, it always pitted one against the other. So the one superstar versus the other, and it was done. So this is one of those stories. The other leading up story is, I think, the game that really made India win the World Cup, which was not even part of the World Cup, is the one day they played at Berbice in West Indies. They lost everything. It's the first time West Indies lost a one-day match. No one had ever beaten West Indies in a one-day match. India beat them in this one inconsequential game during the series in Berbice, where Gavaskar gets a 90, Kapil, I think, scores 82 of 50-odd balls. And they scored 282, which is the highest score in one-day cricket against the West Indies at that time. And then India beats them. And that's where, so all of this is the pre-narration to when they actually arrive at the World Cup. And then there are plenty of stories in the World Cup, some controversial ones, some really hilarious. But for that, you'll have to read the book.
Of course, we'll talk about that. But this is very interesting that somebody who has not seen the World Cup is writing a book on that. And I'm sure your source of information were all the people you met and all those who involved.
Sorry to interrupt. Actually, the story is not through only the players. So while I spoke to the players, I thought the best way to tell a story is always to look at the peripheral view. So there are some very important characters in the book, and their stories run parallel to the cricketers, and they give a very different perspective of what the win was. One of them was a Gujarati businessman at the time. He's a very crucial character in the story, whose shop gets ransacked by white skinhead kids. Why that was very important to the story, you got to understand where or how India was perceived in the world during '83. So there is he's a victim of a racial attack to such. So his journey, he personally wants the Indian team to win because for him it's his countrymen's victory against those whites which mistreat him while he's staying in the UK. So he's a very important character. There's a very rich Indian businessman called Mintu Bhatia who has a son who's born in England and hates being called Indian.
Yeah.
How he changes his perspective after the win. Rajdeep Sardesai, a famous journalist everyone knows, is very important. He's also a character in this book because he was in England at that time as an 18-year-old trying to be a cricketer. His father, a former test cricketer, had sent him there to learn cricket. And he talks about how when he used to play club matches there, he was ostracized. So when the match would get over, most guys, you know, the culture in England is they go for a round of beer after the match. He was never invited because he was the Indian player in a British team. And how the British player's mindset changes after that win. So his story is important. Ayaz Memon, another known journalist, is very important because you see all that's happening with Indian cricket from his eyes, not the player's eyes. The controversies. He, as an Indian journalist, didn't want to watch India's matches. India wins the first match against West Indies. Ayaz, who was sent by his company to cover Indian team, thought that's going to be very boring. India's going to get smashed. So I might as well go watch New Zealand play England. That was the opening match. So while India is playing West Indies on the opening day, he as a journalist didn't go there. He said, I wanted to watch Martin Crowe because, you know, Martin Crowe was Martin Crowe, my idol. So I thought, who's going to watch India get hammered? I went to watch New Zealand play England. New Zealand loses that game. Martin Crowe gets a decent knock. India win again West Indies. So it's the second time. So he misses that game. So I was just, I mean, the whole book in the sense captures, I mean, what that win meant, not just for the players, for a lot of other people. Just to give you an idea of how UK was at that time, it was going through a bit of a chauvinistic time, a bit of right-wing politics. Margaret Thatcher had come into power. She was an absolute favorite of the people. She worked like a frugal housewife who would control all the spending and say, like, Britain, you know, we are the most superior race. As I said, there was chauvinism there. The number one song in UK at that time was by Screwdriver, and it said something like, you know, we made this as an empire, and you guys have come and made this into a slum. You guys meaning all the immigrants who came. So just tells you the sentiment that was around. So that finds a mention. The sentiment that was around in the UK during the 83. So that was the most popular song. So I mean, those things go into the book. So it's more a social commentary rather than just hardcore cricket. So even if you're not a cricket fan, you just want to know what that win did for India. I mean, the book tries to capture that.
Amazing, amazing. And the names you mentioned, Rajdeep Sardesai and Ayaz Memon. I'm happy that I had an opportunity to work with both of them. Rajdeep Sardesai in Times of India and Ayaz Memon in Midday. But 1983 was not, I mean, it just didn't happen just like that. There was something building up to 1983. And we have Nimish here who has been writing for such a long time. And Nimish, can you shed some light on how, before 83, what happened and how could?
See, hello. The cricket in India, I mean, to be precise, started in 1721. When the East Indian Company crew came and landed at Baroda and they played the first friendly match.
Correct.
That's how it started, the love for the cricket.
So basically, Lagan is fiction.
Yes, it's a fiction, definitely fiction.
Yeah.
So we have a long history, but then it was, you know, gradually we kind of started loving this game. Then Mumbai was the epicenter for the game for so long, winning 41 titles of Ranji, and that's, everyone knows that. But when this TRDS scheme started, Talent Research Development Scheme, cricket actually reached the small towns of the India.
Right.
And then if you see the 2011, where we are again champions, players like Dhoni and others, you know, 7 players who came from this TRDS scheme. That's the beauty of this game, that it has reached the roots now. And Mumbai is no more the center. Mumbai is still struggling to win the 42nd Ranji title, so you can make it out. So, so that's how the cricket kind of a love spread over this period of years. Of course, as Nikhil said, Gavaskar's 71 tour, then Ajit Wadekar's 72 England tour. Those were the kind of a cream that, but it stopped there. The actual dream of winning, or we can win, that started with this 83. As we know, this all Sachin Tendulkar story and all this. So from 83 World Cup onwards, every World Cup, we kind of imagine ourselves as a winners. That was a big change which happened pre-83 and post-83. Of course, the other factors also came into the picture. The commercialization or the professionalism of the...
Exactly.
We all should understand, I mean, we all know that cricketer has an active life of 30, 35 years. So there is no harm in comparing the monetary part, what he gets. But I always say that when they show the cricket match on the TV, it looks more glamorous. But if you watch it on the ground, it's like even the India-Pakistan game, which I just watched at Manchester, it was just a game. Whoever plays well can win.
Win.
So, but you should see all the hard work which they do for 2-3 days before, and of course throughout their life. This is all change came into picture. I mean, I remember that famous Sunil Gavaskar saying when Sandeep Patil acted in that one movie, Kabhi Ajnabi The, and there was a song with that dream sequence where Sandeep Patil was shown running in slow motion, the typical Bollywood, style. Gavaskar said to Patil, why they showed in slow motion? It was not required. So that was the level of fitness, level of thing. I think I remember only Yashka Sharma and few others who used to run to the boundary. Others were just accompanying the ball to the boundary.
In fact, just to interrupt you, in the book that while doing research, there's a very interesting incident during the final. And because India is defending such a low total, just to talk about the fitness. So Balwinder Sandhu says, what am I supposed to do? And Kapil Dev says, listen, whatever you do, ensure the ball doesn't go to Sandeep Patil. Because if it goes there, we'll lose. He's not going to move 1 inch. So just to let you know the fitness.
So this was the level of fitness. But now you see, we all know Virat wakes up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. The time he spends in gym. And it's not just money. Okay, the fitness, the professionalism, everything is changed. I mean, that changes with maybe the first contract, maybe Sachin Tendulkar got with Mascarenas, or that era. Yeah. But that brought the professionalism in the cricket, and there is nothing wrong in that. And the prize money, what you said, 2 lakhs, that BCCI paid for the winning team. I have seen now the change in not in the players but in the others also. I have seen people spending £1,500 for one match.
Right.
So the same prize money they are spending. The crowd is just to give you one incident. When I went there for watching the NatWest Trophy final as a spectator from all the way from Mumbai to London, Star Sports took my interview as some crazy fan or something. If they want to do it now, it will be a continuous series. I mean, the amount of people, amount of blue color you saw in the World Cup games. So everything is changed. Players' perspective, professionalism, spectator, everything is changed. And that's a complete business now, but which is kind of going in a good direction, I would say. Yeah. Again, I will just add. I mean, he works with ESPN, so he can add. Yeah. The amount of money the broadcasters spend on the sports. I mean, I'll tell you one example. When this semi-final was, rain affected, ICC wanted to finish it on that day with at least the 20 over. Luckily, it started again running at 6:35 so it went to the next day and we lost. That's a different story. The reason is it's a big chaos, for the broadcaster to arrange everything for the next day and doing it. It's like
all the schedules have to change.
All the schedules. So this is how it's so professional nowadays. Yeah. One more thing I would like to ask about your book, because I was also of the same age of Sachin Tendulkar when we won the '83 World Cup. But I remember that. See, now Lords has a lot of things are changed. There is a media capsule and all, but it was quite a bit open. And there are 3 Lords View 1, 2, and 3 towers. Identical towers at one end of the ground. And what we read that Lata Mangeshkar was seeing that World Cup and then she invited for the Gajar Halwa at her home. Is that true?
Yeah,
story or it's what we're hearing?
No, so I don't know about the Gajar Halwa, but I know that Raj Singh Dungarpur.
I met him. I met him. He used
so
to
his house is just there in the tower next to Lodge. So
just
if you
cross the road and you are at Lodge.
So you can, in fact, just on that point, because allegedly they were seeing each other at one point, Raj Singh Dungarpur and Lata Mangeshkar, which is why that they would be there she was there, and he's the one who got her to sing that or do that concert eventually after the World Cup. So they didn't make any correct, because they didn't get any prize money. So how did the Indian cricket team, Mr. Dungarpur, convince Lata Mangeshkar to have that concert, and they got their money. But she did see the finals. I don't know whether she saw it from there
because
or
at that time it's possible, because I've seen that Lord's Tower. It's possible if those stands were not there, it was possible to see the actual ground, and then she invited the winning team for that's what
may have. That's not part. But the other bits that you talk about in terms of money, why I said 83 is not just a catalyst in terms of cricket, but there's a very interesting incident that happened, and why I say Indian cricket is where it is today financially. It's again down to the 83 World Cup, and that story is there. It all boils down to 2 free passes. So NKP Salve was the BCCI president, and no one expected India to reach the final. In fact, England was supposed to reach the final, and so it was supposed to be a West Indies-England final. So there were no provisions made for any Indian spectators to join. When India beat England in the semis, a few rich businessmen from Bombay flew in to watch the final at Lord's. And as the BCCI president, Mr. NKP Salve had to arrange for a few passes for his guests. He was denied 2 extra passes by it wasn't called the ECB at that time. It was, I forget the name of the organization at the time, but I've mentioned it. They denied him the 2 extra passes. He felt hurt. After India won the final, and this is well documented, it finds itself mentioned in the book. The next day, NKP Salve, because he was also a minister in the Congress government, picks up the phone. First, he has a meeting with his Pakistani counterpart, which is Air Marshal Khan at the time, who's also in England. They both have a breakfast meeting where they decide that why should England get to host the World Cup? Because till that time, all 3 World Cups were hosted in India. So India and Pakistan on that breakfast meeting decide to have a World Cup bid. They say, let's come together because individually we can't. Let's come together and we bid for the next World Cup. Let's take the World Cup away from England. So they decide this. NKP Salve calls Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister at that time, and says that, listen, we need your help and we're going to bid for the next World Cup. Will you? And she says, fine, the government will help you in any which way you want. Then the government ropes in, at that time, Dhirubhai Ambani, who comes in and says, okay, I'll put in the money. And then when the bid happens in the ICC, £20,000 was on offer, so an India-Pakistan joint bid was double the offer. So they offered double the money that England was. So they had no, even though the ICC wouldn't want the World Cup to go away, they had no option but to let the World Cup go because the offer was a double the offer. And that's how the World Cup comes to India in '87, the Reliance World Cup. And why I say it changed, firstly, it opened up the market, it took the game out of England, and then plays a role by someone he just mentioned, Mr. Mark Mascarenhas, who was also managing Sachin Tendulkar at that time. He was a visionary. He founded a company called WorldTel. He realized what the power of television is. Before that, BCCI used to pay Doordarshan money to broadcast cricket matches because Doordarshan would say it costs us money to produce it. They would pay them. Mark Mascarenhas kept going to, he was an unknown figure at that time, kept going to Jagmohan Dalmia and IS Bindra saying that, listen, give me the rights for this TV. And they would not encourage him because, as you know, BCCI are a very close club. And so they wouldn't encourage anyone from outside and say, no, we're not interested. He kept going to them again and again. And eventually they said, if you want to get rid of him, let's quote an obnoxious amount of money. Let's just say, and he'll say, I can't give it, so he'll be off our back. They quote him some, high amount of money. And Mark Mascarenhas at that time famously said, fine, done, let's sign on the paper. He signs on the paper, he gets the TV right deal in India. And that's where Indian cricket changed. Which is why I said, if you go back into that book, you realize how that denial of 2 passes for a match actually changed the landscape of Indian cricket financially.
Exactly. It's amazing. Very amazing to have.
And just to add on the ticket side, how the things have changed. I mean, what you were saying, 2 passes. Please. This year, 2019, Indians got 41% of the final tickets, or in fact more. And England were begging actually, when India didn't make it to final, England were begging to sell, and it actually went into 5 hands. If you see the number of hands it changed, that's how the amount of ticket, they were ready to spend. But of course, as an Indian fan, I've seen, the people literally spend like £600 per average, 1,500, 1,200, depends on the match. English people will still take a call whether to spend that much, but they were literally begging for the tickets when England went to final.
Amazing. I can understand that because say about more than 1 billion people play cricket in the world, and 90% of them are from India.
And that's what ICC research said. Yes, 90%.
So that explains why this happens. And 3 journalists sitting here writing about sports. There was an occasion when I was asked, why did I choose to become a sports journalist? And I said, it's good because you're always writing about the winners. But not always. Sometimes you also write negative stories. So I will ask Nimish to answer this. Has there been a reaction? You have written so many columns and you must have sometimes criticized people, written some negative articles. So has there been a reaction? Because everybody wants only to read praise about himself or herself. So was there anything like that?
So I will put it in different words. Like, the people, how they look at the game, that is also quite changed. Earlier, even 10 years down the line maybe, when we lose, take the case of Mohammad Kaif, who won us that NatWest trophy. In that other game, after a couple of years we lost, there were stones on his house. But that is no more happening. People have started accepting the defeat, It has become little easier for us also to criticize in much positive way, rather than making it more of a melodramatic way. So only negative points of the kind of the game just to take example of the final, what we lost. I mean, there was a beautiful spell by the Bolt, okay, where we lost that in the 45 minutes. But if I want to criticize someone, then I will criticize the rules of the game. You know, the way it started next day morning after the complete rain on the previous day when the wicket was damp. Instead of, criticizing Rohit Sharma getting out or Rahul getting out or Virat Kohli, they are not machines, right? So that's a good thing about people who are reading or watching also has changed, that they have accepted or they have started accepting the defeat, that it will be defeat. So when you ask the criticizing or writing bad thing, we don't write it purposely. If there is something to be written, obviously it has to be written. But I will put it, the negative part, which I wrote the most in all these World Cup articles, is about the ECP's preparation for the World Cup. ECP got this World Cup 16 years before, 2003. They could have prepared well for the rain, okay? But when you see, and you are there for the India-Pakistan match, right? There was a heavy rain the day before at Old Trafford. And they were kind of drying the ground with a bank of halogen lamps and all these, things, which is so weird. I mean, you got 16 years, and there was a guaranteed money for ECB for each board, So money was guaranteed. So they were least bothered whether the match will happen or not. The money was guaranteed from ICC to ECB. So yes, this is the point to criticize. Rather than criticizing a player or something, of course, there is one bad performance. Like Rohit Sharma made 5 centuries, but he's not a machine. He was bound to fail at one point, right? So that that has changed from a writing side also, that we don't unnecessarily criticize a player for one particular bad inning. Now, just to give another example, now Rishabh Pant is on a target of many social media criticization. Yes, he's playing bad shot and getting out, but when you reach that level, first of all, you have reached that level by playing good cricket. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So only thing is the temperament, what you show at that level, because you already have that technique and talent. That's why you have reached that level. So if your temperament is lacking or somewhere, then obviously you have to criticize that player. There is no, you have to. But earlier the criticizing was mainly for main towards result oriented.
Correct.
Now it's that particular moment or that particular shot or how a particular player plays against a fast bowler. If you remember the last year England series, Cheteshwar Pujara was getting out. But then he started scoring. So he changed his. So there is a positive criticism also, which will help player also. And I know that journalists who actually went and talked to Ravi Shastri and told that Cheteshwar Pujara's bat was coming in this angle, so it should be. So there is a good way of also criticizing, which will help the player.
So people are also looking at it with a
so
positive
there is a
manner.
huge difference in people accepting the criticism and the way they look at the criticism.
I was lucky to have one man in Pune like that, Padma Shri Chandu Borde, the chairman of the selection committee. Every time I wrote an article, he never called to praise. But whenever there was something wrong, he would call me and he would call me home and explain me where I went wrong. So I said, har baar criticism lene se acha hai. I stopped writing on cricket and I let my colleagues write and I concentrated on other games. You were
also,
trying to add
one point I would like to say,
sure,
newspaper columns and newspaper articles, sometimes you have to go with the masses, right?
Exactly.
So sometimes you have to give a non-cricketing kind of a headings also, right? A non-cricketing type of a khichadi to start with, to give that. But that is a part and parcel of this writing style, because like when India played against Australia at Oval, I gave the title Reo Samba Kitne Aadmi The the way Shikhar Dhawan played, right? Kitne bowlers the.
Correct.
But this is how you have to praise, you have to criticize, you have to take in that stride how the particular match goes. Because newspaper column writing is completely different art, I would say. It's not like a book writing.
Yeah, it's an art.
You have to go with the masses. Millions of people what they will like to read, because that's again a business for the newspaper.
Yeah. So Nikhil, your book. I mean, is it just a presentation of what you heard from people, or your addition to that?
No, so like I said, I spoke to a lot of people to put this together. Just on the subject of criticism, I mean, I personally feel that journalists should be not fanboys, but someone who observes the game, and sometimes fans don't see it that way. But just because you're going back to the 83 book, in those days, another famous person who finds some mention in the book is the Wisden. Wisden, as you know, is the Bible of cricket. So David Frith was the editor of Wisden at that time. Wow. In fact, he had written on the Wisden when India actually came for the World Cup, saying that countries like India should not even be invited for the World Cup, because all they do is make the tournament a bit slow. Because as you know, India before that in 2 World Cups had won just one game. That was
Correct.
against a country called East Africa, where they
Yeah.
just had semi-professional guys just put together, so they play.
Correct.
So in the 2 World Cups in 75, 79, India didn't win a single match, barring that game against East Africa. So of course, India wasn't a great country in one-day cricket, which is why Wisden's editor even wrote something like that. And which is why I say it's remarkable for a country that was the least favorite. In fact, Zimbabwe, who were playing their first World Cup, were considered slightly better one-day unit than the Indian team. Duncan Fletcher was the captain at that time. People would know him as an India coach. They were slightly better because we spoke about fitness, how Indians never looked at that. They were a much fitter team. They had some good seam bowlers, which would help them in that condition. They could have beaten India when they were 17 for 5 in that game in Tunbridgewell, where Kapil Dev played the greatest knock that there is. So, I mean, India was at that stage, and the media dished them out.
Right.
For example, when the semi-final against England was happening, there was, and this is another very important incident of how India motivated themselves. The BBC was running a program looking ahead to the semi-final between India and England. And they had Graham Fowler, who was the member of the English team at that time. And all he spoke about was how they will face West Indies in the final, or how they're fast bowlers. And this is a program that the Indian team saw in their television sets in their hotel room before their semi-final, where the British media was not even talking about the semis. They were more interested in how England is going to be playing the final. So, I mean, the media was also that jingoistic or as biased in those days. It has changed now. Like he mentions, the viewers kind of changed. They are more receptive to criticism. But I still say that there's still a long time to go, because I can understand that a lot of them are genuine fans. So some of the big players, if you were to write a critical article, it may not be taken in the right spirit. I don't think that's just the case with India. It may happen globally.
Yeah.
But it's always been the case, even if I was to look at the book.
So Nimish, I would ask you, when actually did the world start taking India seriously as far as cricket is concerned?
So if it's a one-day game, yes, after 83,
Okay.
every time we were, we were semi-finalists few times, so including 87, which was the next one. So it was not a fluke. We won World Series in between 85, that famous Audi story, Shastri. So it was not by fluke, just 83. So world started taking India seriously as, kind of when we won the 83 World Cup. In a test, it was in bits and patches because we have got few success overseas, and then not like so. We lost just few years, 5 years down the line. We lost 4-4 in England and Australia, but again we started winning in Australia, which is, see, Test cricket is completely different ball game because the host country makes pitch very suitable to them. I mean, you have seen in the recent Ashes also, right? Australia won it, but how it was the pitches were made for the English bowlers. So to answer your question, 83, yes, definitely the one day. Test cricket, they started taking it, but 71, 72 were kind of a one-time thing. Then it was a lean patch. And then again, when we started, to be honest, when the Test cricket, we had the strongest team was Sehwag, Tendulkar, Ganguly, Dravid, Lakshman, Kumble was the strongest team. And we were kind of in a position that we could have defeated any team in the world. And we have done it on occasion. So that's what the strength started showing.
But did the change of format also contribute to the popularity of cricket? Because from Test cricket we moved to one day, then the 2020, the limited overs matches, and different formats. So how did that contribute?
See, there is a different, like a movie. There are different genre. Who likes to watch a different cricket. I know a few guys who are very much cricket fan, but they have not yet watched even a single ball of IPL. Okay. Similarly, I know guys who just watch Test cricket. I mean, right now also, given choice, I was watching Ashes compared to the India, South Africa or West Indies series which was going on. Because, so it's an individual kind of a perception which cricket you like. But I would like to make one point here about the India and especially the England. See, when I went to England for this World Cup, first day I went to Lords to collect my accreditation. And there was a game between Middlesex and Essex going on. It is a regular county game, no final, nothing. But still there was a good amount of crowd in the stands. And with MCC, it's like a socializing thing for them with their kind of a typical MCC tie and suit and all. But there was a considerable amount of crowd. There was a ticket for that match. And now what we see on the Ranji scene here, even if you give it free, even for the finals,
Yeah.
there was hardly, which was not the case earlier. Earlier, I remember in the era where the main players used to play the Ranji. Now it's all in India, at least it's very player specific. I've seen the
Okay.
crowds when Tendulkar played that Ranji match, or Wasim Jafar was playing. But after that, it's completely lull. So that thing is a complete different.
Okay, you mean to say the audience are staying
Yes,
away?
choice is preferred. Choice is, like he said, Tendulkar
Huh.
at that era also didn't like to watch 120 over
So-
game.
so only the crowd
So
pullers.
Similarly, and also the technology also has changed, because now we are giving the choice
Yeah.
of anytime, anywhere,
Watching
any
at
platform.
home, yeah.
So I don't want to watch it as per the TV schedule. I want to watch it as per my, my
Correct.
wish, my platform.
Yeah.
Where I want. So it's complete different digital era, which has also contributed to the change in the taste of the audience.
Superb. So, in my days, I mean, when I was in school, and I took up sports, uh, thinking that this would earn me a livelihood later, because I knew that I'm not going to score much in academics. So at least sports will be a support where people will pick me up for my performance in the field. How effective has cricket been? Because so many students, they play cricket. Does it help? I mean, building career.
See, as you realize, you only said, or you only given the answer. At one point, you realize as a player yourself, how much you can reach. Whether you have that kind of a passion is one thing, talent
Yeah.
is one thing, and opportunity is the third.
Correct.
But you know about your talent. At one point of time, we all were players. We know whether we can reach that highest level where only 11 can play. Now there are much option with IPL and all
Right.
this, but still where you can make it as a career or not. The problem is that people nowadays are seeing only money part of the cricket, and they want to push kids into the cricket. In Mumbai, the place like Mumbai, if you see in the summer vacation, you literally
Yeah.
see the summer camp, cricket coaching camp at
Exactly.
every ground. Whether those coaches are certified, level A, B, level 1, 2, no one checks. They just want to make their son as Sachin Tendulkar, next Sachin Tendulkar. That's the problem. There are officially 80 tournaments in Mumbai, cricket tournaments, including the Kanga leagues and all this. But you need to also control on that, the number of tournaments what you have. Then only the quality, because right now what is happening is that everyone is looking cricket as, कुछ नहीं तो मेरे बेटे को IPL तक पहुंचा दो. That's what
Yeah.
people are looking at as cricket, rather than
Exactly.
a game where when you are playing a game, you should have the aim of playing a test cricket. But that is not anymore. You can see the international players are also taking kind of a conscious decision of quitting test cricket and focusing on T20. But that is towards the later part of their career. But from a individual point of view, especially the Indians, the lot of academies, I'll not name anyone, but which are floating like
Exactly.
daily
Yeah.
with some global names, and people just think that if I put my kid there, he will be the next Sachin Tendulkar. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But luckily, I would say as you said at the beginning of this discussion, that the focus has now changed to hockey, kabaddi,
Fortunately,
and
yes.
football. Football is
Yeah.
the next wave. So
Yeah. To add to what you said, cricket academies mushrooming all over the country. Gary Kirsten has an academy in Pune, but finding difficult to survive because initially there was a big crowd, and slowly people started dwindling. How have cricketers you've met reacted to this kind of change that is happening in cricket?
I mean, the previous generation will always be bitter. The current would be happy, but that always happens, right? It's just the times that we live in. But as he mentioned, I mean, it has opened up a lot of scope for even today. It's a reality that you could be a Ranji cricketer and make enough money after doing your MBA. What a corporate job would give you, you would make that much money playing just Ranji Trophy cricket, because those are the kind of fees that are being paid. Earlier, as you know, we were talking, if you didn't make it to the 15 guys who played for India, it was not a career. Today it is. Not just IPL, which of course you could still play, but I'm saying even if you're playing domestic cricket, even playing Ranji Trophy cricket, I think just the match fee itself would come to about 13 to 14 lakhs per annum just for that. Plus you would get, some other work like as coaching, as you said.
if you
Bring
win,
it
then it's a
academy.
bonus.
Yeah, it's
5
a
crore
bonus.
bonus
You
from
get that,
BCCI.
yeah. So the money is being divided. BCCI does that. Though I'm sure that they could just be a bit more generous and give more money out of the profits that they make. But it's still trickling down. So yeah, I mean, if you want to be, you could now be the 100th best cricketer in the country and still have a living, which was never the case earlier. So in that sense, yeah, it has changed, and for the good, I'd say.
So last 10 minutes of the session. We'll of course have a question and answer session where the audience can ask questions. But before moving on to that, one last question to both of you. You can answer separately. How do you see the future of cricket in India? What do you foresee?
See, the future of cricket, I mean, we are already at the top of the world at this moment. So what is, when you ask someone who is already at the top of the world, what is about that? It's like it's only whatever you can dream. I mean, we already pulled the center to the India by money, by the fan numbers, as you said, 90% of the fans are also from India. It was a big shocker when I was watching India-Pakistan at Manchester, because it was expected that it will be Manchester is like a Pakistan home ground, but it was like India home ground turned out, and all venues. So everywhere it's changed. We are at the top at the cricket level. You can see the people who, like the Australians who first came to India. I can take the names also, Shane Warnes and all this, who came first time with their water cans, bean cans and everything. Now whenever I go to Star Studio at a place called Lower Parel, which is like in the heart of the mill land, and I used to see, the players like Brett Lee and Peterson who criticize Indian conditions at one point. They are coming just like a job to do the commentary at 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon, stays there till 11 o'clock, goes back to their hotel. So we have pulled the best of best cricketers, ex-cricketers, good cricketers in IPL, which is giving opportunity for the domestic cricketers to learn the professionalism. When you are playing with the international players in IPL, that's the best thing that you'll learn, as the professionalism of those players. Playing with a De Villiers, for example, the RCB guys have learned a lot. So, I mean, just one name, there are many. So, that is already we have got all this to India. Still, from an administrative point of view, I would say, though we have managed to get an ICC office from London to Dubai, the next step would be to get it to India.
Wow,
I would say that's
that is something that we can only expect, and it may be possible. I mean,
it may be possible, but we need to change the employer ratio also.
I can understand. So, what would you say?
I think future of cricket is related to future of Indian cricket is related to future of international cricket, which isn't the healthiest at the moment. So, while the game continues to grow in the country, you can't survive all by your own. Cricket now is, not the preferred sport in most of the traditional powerhouses.
Exactly.
I mean, and I've seen after having traveled covering cricket in most of those places. Australia now it's struggling to hold on to the second spot because soccer is really giving a run for its money. We all know that rugby and Aussie rule is number one there. England, the same thing. It's struggling to catch the imagination. Thank God for this World Cup that England won. It'll just give some sort of impetus for the game there. South Africa, it has the worst decline ever. I went to cover I've covered a few cricket series in South Africa, but when I went to cover the Football World Cup, I had a car rented for the entire duration of that Football World Cup. And the driver, who was born and brought up in Joburg, did not know where, the ground is, or what is played inside that ground, or where Wanderers is. He had no idea, born and brought up there. So it just tells you where that sport is in that particular country. So the talent is drying up, the popularity is drying up. One thing that is definitely happening, they've already started taking step, are curtailing the number of one-day games that will be played. So for all you know, and as proud as I am to write this book about a one-day tournament and how it changed Indian cricket, the one-day format is under threat. It may not be there, it may not exist, because I don't think cricket wants to let go of Test cricket, and it shouldn't, which is why you've got the World Test Championship. T20, as you know, based on all the leagues and all, has become the most popular format. And I think in that scenario, the one that would be sacrificed would be the one-day format. And we're already seeing signs of that happening.
Yeah, we have seen. I mean, the Champions Trophy is scrapped now. That's why India got this back-to-back 2020 World Cup. Next one will be in Australia, but that 21 will be in India to compensate. Otherwise, we would have held the Champions Trophy. So what Nikhil said is right. The one-day format will be the kind of is hanging in between of the traditional Test and the quickfire 2020. So it will go, and there is a 10 over already coming. If 100 balls, I'm already getting mails from the ECB. There is a next summer, it's 100 ball cricket, so it's an invitation for that. 100 ball is so there are new formats coming in. Which
Correct.
see, ideally the whole idea was also to we have tried many times to popularize in the countries like US, which will never happen because they are hardcore baseball fans. I lived there, so I know. But we have started 2020 so that the whole thing will finish in 3 hours, which is similar to kind of games which that kind of audience will like. But
Yeah.
so we tried so many options to that, to put it in Olympics also. That was also one of the things. But it yes, a long way to go for that.
Unfortunately, this is the dark side of the story, but we can't avoid that. By the way, Nikhil, is your book available out here?
Yeah, it is in the
So,
crossword.
I mean, this is
bookstore.
something for the audience here. So, if you really
This is how
want,
it
you can
looks
pick
like.
up the book. So, the floor is open for questions from the audience. I would only request each one to introduce yourself and just say whom the question is aimed at. The gentleman there.
Rohit, Nikhil, question for you. Your views on the current trend of cheating in cricket?
No, cheating in what sense? Are you talking about cheating on the field or cheating
On
off?
the field, on the field. by the
What
players.
incident are you referring to?
Recently, some incidents have happened. I would not.
No, you're talking about the sandpaper gate incident.
Sandpaper way, all those types. They were there in the past also,
Yeah.
but now only you are coming to know about it more and more.
No, it was always there, as you know that we knew about it then. Just that now there are 10 more cameras on the field which can catch every move, and which is why I thought it was very naive for Australia to have done that, knowing very well that now every move is captured. But I think sport is like that. While I'm not for cheating, it's trying to push the limit, and you're trying to find every little advantage that you get. Every time you cross the line, in which case Australia did, you get penalized as they did. I thought the penalty was very harsh to give them for a year. We've seen people do much worse things and get away, while they needed to be reprimanded. But in the end, I guess it's paid off. Look how hungry Steve Smith has come back. So I guess back the mind they'd all be happy. That is the only thing that I can think of. You're talking about the final of the World Cup. I don't know if you're referring to that. I don't think that was cheating all within the laws of the game. We all started complaining after the event had happened. Everyone knew that the countback rule for boundaries existed, so it wasn't made last moment to favor England. Even the overthrow rule has existed. People have taken advantage of it. At other times, people have not. In that case, Ben Stokes refused to take run. Unfortunately, the ball went past the boundary. So I think that was all. None of that was cheating. Just that England is not the most loved country when it comes to cricket. So the hue and cry, and New Zealand is loved. So
Just one thing I will add. I mean, it's a funny thing. When for my book on Mumbai cricket, book launch ceremony, Kiran More had come and we were chatting with him. We all remember Pakistan. We used to call it we play with 13 players. So Kiran More said once that Miyadad was playing Test cricket, and he was continuously sweeping. And Kiran More said at that time there were no microphones in the stumps and all. So he was saying that we'll get you LBW. So Miyadad told that, अरे वो दोनों को मैंने बहुत खाया पिलाया, वो मेरे को आउट नहीं देने वाले जब तक मैं सेंचुरी करूँगा. So imagine the case, if you had camera earlier, more cameras, more rules. I mean, cheating was throughout since it started.
So, any other question? Yeah.
Two things. First is not really a question. I think Nikhil mentioned some time ago that in '83 it was not ECB. Was it TCCB that time?
yes, that's correct. I just couldn't remember the name. It was Test cricket
and
and
county cricket,
Correct.
board.
That's the organization. Yeah.
And second is my question that I have something in mind to devise a format for Test cricket to make it more popular, or then bring it back to those levels. So whom should I contact in BCC, or how should I go about?
No,
I
mean
have some format I feel.
No, so MCC are the guardians of the game, but you could always write a mail to ICC. I could share the email address and you could send them a mail. I don't know how receptive they will be, because I know of this gentleman called Mr. Again, I forget his name. VJD method he came up with, which is sort of a Duckworth-Lewis, an alternate to Duckworth-Lewis system. A Chennai-based gentleman. We featured him a couple of times while I was working at NDTV. And he tried to convince the ICC that his system is far better than Duckworth-Lewis, which leaves some room for unfair result to come at the end of the day, and his does not. But it's been 6 years he's trying. They haven't been very receptive. But I could share the email address with you.
Okay, thanks.
Just to add to the story, all these methods, what we see, correct me if I'm wrong, but all this DRS, Duckworth, everything, there is a royalty associated with it.
What I'm saying is not a Duckworth Lewis system or this. What I'm saying is
No,
No, I understand what
but
you're saying.
at the
You're
same-
saying in general for Test cricket. I just
Yes,
give an
yes.
example, just as an example, but I'll share the email address with you. Yeah.
But one thing I would say that you should write, because I'll tell you my experience when I wrote to Gavaskar when he was the chief of technical committee about that replacement player. You can have the 12th man who can be actually a playing one. And I got a reply back also that they are trying it somewhere in domestic cricket in South Africa, and they tried it also for some time, but they didn't stop. So when you have idea, just don't hold yourself, just write it. Maybe worth sending it.
send it to ICC, right?
Send it to ICC. That's ICC Cricket Committee is the best place. Maybe you can copy to BCCI also or NCA also.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, sir. Any other question? Yeah, the gentleman there. I'll come to you.
No, Nikhil, my question is for you. Nimish just narrated a funny incident about Mr. Kiran More from his book. Maybe if we could have some incidences from your book that would make maybe non-technical, just cricket watchers like us
There are
want to read.
there are plenty of hilarious stories there. One of the funny theme that runs across the book is Kapil Dev and his insistence of speaking in English, even though he wasn't good at speaking the language. He's very candid about it. When I spoke to him also, he mentioned it. So he was often asked that, you're the captain, and so how is it that an Indian captain won't be able to speak English? So he said that's because the previous captains all came from a cultural background. I come from an agricultural background, which is why I'm not good, but I'm good at what I do. So there are funny stories of him, of how he would choose to speak in English all the time. That also led to one of the biggest misunderstandings during the World Cup between Gavaskar and Kapil. In a team meeting, it was Kapil Dev who chose to speak in English, and he was talking to everyone, and he said something to Mr. Gavaskar at the time, which was to the extent that, Sunny, it's high time you get run. But what he meant to say was that law of averages, because Sunny Gavaskar wasn't having a great tournament. What he meant to say is that because you haven't had a great tournament, it's high time you will now get runs, basically, law of average. But the way he said it, it felt like he was questioning his place. And this happened right before the semi-final, and Gavaskar chose not to, was almost going to skip it. Then the manager came in and then sorted thing out, saying that, listen, just forgive his English, he's actually trying to say something else, but it's just come across as something, and then they patched up. Staying with his English, there's an incident where Kapil Dev asks, he's lost his English music cassette, and he asks for, has anyone seen it? And he asks Sandeep Patil that, have you seen my English cassette? Sandeep Patil says, even if I found it, I wouldn't listen to it because I don't want my English to be as bad as yours. So, so I won't listen to your English. So, I mean, there are other incidents like that. There is Yashpal Sharma, who's a quintessential Punjabi from Ludhiana, and his English accent is very thick with Punjabi accent. So there's this one incident where he's getting late for the team practice, and he comes running down to the breakfast table in England, and he's screaming, I'm late, and because he's thinking the breakfast will close down. And so the waitress there says, no sir, you're fine, you're not late, I'll serve you breakfast. And Yashpal just has a very stone-faced look about him, he doesn't understand. And then he kept saying, I'm late, and the waitress doesn't understand. So they're having a communication problem. To which then, Syed Kermani steps in and says that he's actually asking for omelette, just that his accent is that of I'm late. So there are plenty of funny incidents like that in the book.
Yeah, sir.
Nimish, question to you. Your comment, our fortune seems to be intertwined with cricket. 83 World Cup onwards, how our self-esteem and cricketing esteem has gone in a similar direction, your comments? Because you also travel a lot.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, from 83 onwards, if it's a one-day game, we started believing first that we can win, whichever may be the opponent. And for every World Cup, it actually translated that passion or that... First thing is that you have to show to the world. I mean, the team has changed from 83 to 87, but still, there's always logical progression when the team changes. So it was kind of a team spirit also, that to show the world that it was not a fluke of 83, that we, how they changed from. Then 85, Gavaskar was a captain, right? So for the World Series, then so the things have changed. What it was in 83, but still the belief in the cricket world. I mean, as a players as well as for the spectators, they started looking match in a different way, that we can win. That we can win is very important. I mean, rather than actually playing and winning, that having the thought itself is more important. That's the thing which was that's why the '83 World Cup has kind of got more into the Indian cricket, as you said, two ticket story. This is two thing, and the way we started thinking, then every World Cup or every match we played, we started that we can win.
I have two questions. First question is to both of you. How and when did you develop interest in cricket?
And the second question? You said you
second-
had two questions.
Yeah, second question is to Nikhil sir. That everyone does not only have one favorite sport, everyone has many, several. So why did you only decide to write on cricket? Why not other sports?
Ah, okay. Okay, you answer. Yeah, sure.
So when I started, you said when I started liking cricket.
Yeah.
I think I don't remember the day I was born, but maybe as a typical Mumbai person, cricket was in my blood. So at that time also there were not so many sports in school. Also, I remember in my school it was only like kabaddi was, but on the ground, not like the glamorous kabaddi what we see in the league now, but it was on the ground. Kabaddi, there was a kho, and there was a langdi, and basically the games which didn't need any equipment. Cricket was the only equipment required game, bat and ball. Stumps also we can make any stumps. So that's how the cricket liking was somehow more, and the cricketing idols was Gavaskar, Vengsarkar, Sandeep Patil. So I think it also depends on the city where you grow. I believe, because Mumbai, if you ask this question to a person from Mumbai or person from at that era in the the village or the somewhere in the Uttar Pradesh, maybe the answer you might get different. So maybe the city also brings that effect of liking cricket, and Mumbai was a center of cricket, as I said. That was automatic for me.
First, I'll answer your first question. Why? When did I start liking cricket? I mean, as a kid, I played just as everyone plays with kids. But I think my love started when my father took me to watch my first cricket match live. That was a Nehru Cup final at the Eden Gardens between West Indies and Pakistan. I saw Viv Richards and bat and Abdul Qadir bowl live, and that's it. And that's the day I got hooked, and I kept following, and then became a sports journalist. I also became a sports journalist because I have some of my friends here. As they would tell you, I don't know anything else. So I guess that was the only option I had. That's it. The second question you asked, why did I write about cricket? I mean, as I mentioned right at the start, the '83 World Cup story fascinated me. No one had chronicled it from start to end. And so it was close to me. I would have written it. I love all other sports. And also I had access to these cricketers. Having covered cricket for very long and having worked with these people, I had access to get their story and then put it down. If I love soccer and I love Formula One, if Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo are listening to this, they allow me to interview them, I'll probably write about football, or if Lewis Hamilton allows me, I'll write about Formula One. But just that I had access to these guys, so I wrote it. But that's not to say that I wouldn't write about any other sport.
So one thing I would like to add on this access, then we can. This access is very important and very crucial. Once you start getting this access, which I started in recent years, you learn a lot from these ex-cricketers also, including what they eat, what they do to learn the game even after playing days are over. How they take the notes. I was sitting next to Michael Arthurton and Mike Brearley, the two English captains. But when Michael Arthurton completes his commentary stint, he comes to press box. He watch game each ball by ball. Actually, nowadays you can get all this data as in digital format. He takes notes, what happens on that ball, and then he writes his column for the Times. So this access is very important. It will keep on teaching you every now and then, how to read the game, how to learn the game, and how to write about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, the panelists, both Nikhil and Nimish.